Welcome to the latest episode of the Alternative Car Show, and we have a world exclusive for you. A little bit more on that later on, but first, here's the 6R4 replica that we promised you.
Right, well, I'm Ian Oddy, and this is my Metro 6R4 replica. Very important, that piece.
So, I can see, I don't think the inspiration for doing it needs explaining, but how do you go about building a Metro 6R4 from scratch? Because that's basically what you've done.
In effect, one of the biggest challenges is to actually find a Metro that's not rusty. That's harder than it sounds.
I know from conversations with Dan Elmore actually that you're quite a gifted engineer and quite modest about it.
I do a bit of engineering, so yeah, there's a lot more work than most people realise building a car. Yeah, it's not simple.
So from the planning stage, you've got a Metro shell. Obviously, you've then got to make decisions about your running gear and the layout and how you're going to do it. So if you could talk us through some of that process.
A lot of it starts with you've got to have a plan. You can't just go in blind, otherwise you end up doing everything twice or three times. And a lot of it really started from the front bulkhead where your pedals are. And I know that doesn't sound logical, but that's where the world starts, because then it sets your seat point, then it sets your rear bulkhead, which sets where your engine is, which sets where your gearbox is, and to try and get all that within the tailgate, that's distances. And you end up having to use a V6 because of the length. You couldn't get a V8 in without it sticking out the tailgate, so sort of dictates where things end up, really does that, if you want a sensible seating position.
You've gone down making it a realistic replica by making it mid-engined.
Yes.
Talk us through the engine and gearbox that you used.
The engine is a Duratec V6. They're used in the Ford ST220, Jag X series. Obviously, Mazda do use them as well. Noble use them, which is also where you can get quite a lot of information for putting a turbo on and what bits you need to do and where you can go with the horsepower and things like that. But then to make it rear-wheel drive and put the engine the correct way around, in my opinion, longitudinal, you end up using a transaxle, and the most common ones of them are the Audi ones. So then you end up having to make an adapter plate and matching release bearings and clutches and things, and there's a bit of work in there, because once I turboed it, I started breaking gearboxes, And then I ended up putting a twin plate clutch into it, and making that as well myself, because an engineering company, I'll not mention names, said it was impossible, so I had to make my own. Their answer was, well, reduce the power, and to me that's not an option. So
which Audi gearbox did you end up plumbing for?
Well, originally when I first built the car, it was an 012, which is the smaller of the transaxles. In it now is an 01E, and it's got the JHM carbon synchros, it's got a limited slip gripper differential and things in it. So it's kind of bulletproof now. In hindsight, I should have done that originally, but of course, hindsight's wonderful, isn't it? You never know where you're going to stop with power, and power is like, so it's addictive, isn't it? You always want a bit more, and then you start breaking things, so.
Okay, that's brought us round to the engine. So talk us through the power and the turbo fitment and so on.
The current setup that's in it, it's got a GTX 3076 in it. On low boost, it's 3/4 of a bar, which is 11 or 12 psi. That makes 430 horsepower. Middle boost, I've got 3 boost settings. Middle boost is around 500 horsepower, which is 1.25 bar, and the full boost, which is 2 bar a boost, makes around 600. We couldn't get the numbers off the dyno because we couldn't stop the wheels spinning, but it goes quite well. But seldom do I use the higher boost levels unless there's a motorbike or something thinks he's quick.
And the suspension setup, because again, that's something that the layman doesn't really appreciate. Is quite a complicated thing to do because it obviously can't be related in any way to the original Metro.
No, it isn't. I went for the original Metro, had McPherson struts, which in the 80s everybody used, which is fine. But things have moved on. There's not that many cars, so that's got double A-arm suspension coilover, 2 1/4 inch coilovers all round, and I designed and built all that.
So as I said, a gifted engineer.
You only got to read a few books and watch YouTube, don't you, really?
So, what sort of time scale this you've done it all yourself, so you're talking about, this is not a 5-minute job as well.
Fortunately, I'm self-employed, and I set out a plan a few years ago to just get stuck in and get it built and get it working. And originally it only had a standard engine, the standard gearbox, standard clutch and things, just get it working basically. And it took me about 7 months to do that. But that was a lot of hours. I was getting up at 6 o'clock in the morning and working till 10 at night doing it to get it done. There is a lot of work in it.
Talk us through the paint, because it's a lovely colour.
It's actually a Ford red, and I do like red. Everything I've got is red. And believe it or not, I actually painted that in my back garden on a nice day in March a few years ago. It's not perfect. I call it a 1 metre paint job, but for me, it's not a show car. I use it, so it doesn't need to be perfect.
For a rally car, it looks absolutely resplendent.
Yeah, so. For a rally car, it's very good because they don't care either.
Obviously, having built the car, and it's absolutely stunning. How often do you get to use it?
If it's a nice day, I use it. I go shopping in it, I go to the post office, I go do track days, I do drag racing. I just use it. If it's really poor weather or the roads are covered in snow and ice and salt and things, no, it stays at home. But otherwise, I use it all the time.
And obviously, having designed the car, done all the all the design work on paper, and then constructed it. The first time you got in and drove it, what was the experience like? Because it's a new car. Was it anything like you anticipated?
I'll be absolutely honest. The first time down the road, it was terrible because when you build suspension, you don't know what geometry to put on and balance it up and what spring rates. You can do all the calculations you want with spring frequencies and things, but it really wasn't very nice to drive when I first drove it. But then perhaps having spent 7 months building it, the urge to just go out and just have a little drive of it probably overtook common sense and setting things up a little bit better than I should have done. So yeah, it wasn't very good first time, but it soon developed.
So you've now got it how you like it?
Yes, but I'm never stop. There's always something going on.
Well, that was going to bring me to my next question, sort of what are the plans going forward with the car, because these things evolve?
Minor things which will be on this week is a cold air intake and a knacker duct on the rear window for cold air. There'll be 2-3 inch scoops going in there. But longer term, I'm going to go sequential, paddle shift, flat shifting, because I can and I want to, and it's a project. It's like my toy project is that it stops me getting bored. I get bored with normal things, so I like playing with things.
And is this sort of pride of the fleet, or I know that you're into model cars as well?
I do a lot of RC racing, but RC racing years ago was my hobby, but then it became a business. And when a hobby becomes a business, it kind of loses its hobbiness, isn't it? It's like it's not as much fun. So I still do that, and that is my business. So this is like the hobby to get away from the RC racing. I know people use RC racing to get away from their business, where I just do it the other way around, really. But I do a lot of RC racing even now.
The 6R4, the real one, with the four-wheel drive setup and so on, and the big diffs front and rear, can be quite a challenge to use, in everyday driving. As a driving experience, I imagine this is actually quite relatively straightforward and docile.
It drives absolutely fine. Yes, it's not as quiet and as smooth as a modern car, but I've been in modern rally cars that are far worse than this. It drives, it changes, it'll do 35 miles per gallon if you keep your foot off it, which is really, really good. Cruising on the motorway. If you give it, the beans, you're into single numbers, but you can't make horsepower from fresh air, so you've got to put some fuel in it. And
in terms of maintenance of the engine, I mean, obviously it's tuned up quite a bit. What sort of mileage do you get before you have to do any rebuilds? Or
I haven't rebuilt it yet, but in saying it's got all that horsepower, you're not using it all the time on the road. You wouldn't have a license for 5 minutes if you did, so really you're sort of tickling around. I expect it'll get to 10-20,000 miles before I need to put bearings and rings and things into it. And servicing, oil changes and things, that's the crux of most engines, and I do that religiously every 3,000 miles, period, no matter what it's done.
So thank you very much for letting us look at the car. It's absolutely fabulous.
No problem.
And now this. Let me introduce you to a lovely guy called Les Harrison.
I'm Les Harrison, and this is the HRC Hurricane.
So tell me about the car, because you know, I can see immediately the quality of the you know, the finish on it. So tell me a bit about your background and then how the car came about.
Okay, so I'm from an engineering background. I started out as a tool maker, fitter, but also the youngest of three brothers, and we all race superbikes. So I've been surrounded by machinery, 2- and 4-wheel machinery, as far back as I can remember. Not long after leaving school, I ended up working for a company that built, I think at the time they were regarded as the best non-works factory rally cars available anywhere on the planet. So I got a great education there building race cars. And then later on, as I said, racing superbikes myself, helping to build superbikes, maintain them, so on and so forth. And then also 4-wheel competition as well, I was heavily involved with.
Tell me how this particular car came about and your plans for it.
The car, I'd studied what had been going on in the motorcycle industry for the last 15 years. Quite a few of the motorcycle manufacturers were doing very, very well out of designing and manufacturing retro based motorcycles. And what I mean by retro is they'd take a 60s or 70s style of motorbike, be it a cafe racer or a scrambler, and they'd redesign it, but with today's kind of design considerations also included. So you got a mix of new and old, and I just happen to think when you mix new and old together from a design point of view, magical things happen, you know. So after that was the inspiration really for me to bring about this car. Now it's got 70 years worth of sports car, race car lines within it. People will look at the car. I've had so many different opinions on, oh, I can see this type of car and that type of car, so on and so forth. But it is totally unique. I haven't been inspired by one particular car. When you get to see all around the car, you will see aspects of many, but it isn't a copy of one car.
Tell me about the construction of the car.
The car is based on a BMW Z4 sports car, both on the E85 model and the E86 model. So that takes you from 2003 up to 2009. A car which I think is a wonderful car from an engineering point of view. It's a fantastic package. High rev and straight 6 engines, great reliability, low cost of ownership. They handle fantastic. They've got all the basic elements you'd want in a sports car. However, me personally, I was never a fan of the look. From some angles, depending where you're viewing the car from, they're bland, some parts ugly, and some bits are okay. I just thought the car offered so much potential when it came to rebodying, restyling. One of the biggest factors is, and few people know about it, is the fact that the rear quarter panels on these cars bolt off. So you can completely change the rear quarter panels without altering the car's chassis. So the strength, I've gone nowhere near the chassis on this car. It's as was. Same with the airbag, safety systems, airbags, all that kind of kit. It's as BMW intended.
Let's talk about the bodywork. That's GRP or?
It is GRP, yeah. The people who manufacture the panels for me use a resin. It's not cheap. It really isn't cheap, the resin. I do pay a premium for it, but it's if you took one of my cars over to Spain, did a tour of Spain, any hot country on the planet, there are no issues regarding heat.
Yeah.
And the resin, which I've known in the past to be an issue with other people's cars. Also, it's 20% more flexible and 20% stronger, and those figures are massive. So even though I pay a premium for it, it really is money well spent.
And the car will not be sold as a kit. This is a production car.
For the foreseeable future, I have absolutely no plans to sell it as a kit. And the reason being, so much effort has gone from day one. For me, this has been the best part of 3 years worth of pure hard graft. COVID, to be honest with you, has been of massive benefit to me, because working 14-hour days 7 days a week became the norm. But it was easier to do because there was nothing else to do. There were no pubs to go to, there were no restaurants to go to, there was no football to watch. So, you know, the whole project had my undivided attention for so long. And then, unfortunately, working 7 days a week and putting those hours in, even outside of the lockdowns, that becomes the norm. So I've probably done this job in half the time otherwise would have taken.
And tell us the market you're aiming for, and how people will be able to get hold of one.
The market I'm aiming for, to be honest with you, that's a tricky question, because this is a rebodied existing car. It isn't a typical option for the kit car people as such, because it's not so much a kit car, it's more a body kit car, I suppose, is for want of a better description. And so it's for those people who love the individuality, the character that a kit car body shape can bring, but you've got that factory build quality. You know, at the end of the day, that car goes round the corner like a BMW. Yeah. You know, because it's a BMW underneath it all. So the way I see it, I've taken one of the greatest cars, in my opinion, that BMW have ever created, but given it a body, a shape that is worth all the fuss, if you like it. I think the look of the car matches what the car is all about. It's a great car.
So would people order a complete car from you, or would they find a Z4 and bring it to you, or how would you work it? Yeah,
there is a choice. If someone's got a Pride and Joy Z4 and that they might have already invested quite a bit into regarding suspension performance, what have you, for sure I can take their car and transform it. I've got a feeling it'll end up probably a 50-50 split on that score. But yeah, other than that, I will build things that I think other people will like, fingers crossed. And obviously on top of that, take orders.
So how would people find you to be able to inquire about the car?
This is hot off the press, this car. This really is something of a yeah. So I apologise for the fact the website isn't up yet, because there's more photographing needs doing. We also have another model on the way, but I felt like it's about time people got to see the car. So
the best do an update and let people know as soon as it's available, if you like.
Yeah, ideal, great. Yeah, great if you can do that, super. Best form of contact for me right now would be email address, and that is lesharrison848@btinternet.com. That's the best way to get hold of me. So I'll repeat that. It's lesharrison848@btinternet.com.
A little bit of motorsport for you now. Lombard Rally Bath organises some historic rally demonstration events, and this is the much delayed Mintex. Welcome to the Dunscombe Park stage for the COVID delayed 2022 Mintex Rally. And here we have a beautiful array of classic rally cars doing a demonstration run on this stage. None more classic than Orange Box, driven by Andy Ace Harrison with Phil Senior in the co-driver's seat. This car has a history going right back to the 60s, but we'll come back to that later on. Car number 2, John Midgley in the Porsche 911. Bob Dennis is driving the Subaru Legacy in the 555 Classic livery. This good to see a legacy. An awful lot of imprexes, but this of course was the forerunner. Car number 12, glorious. Gerald Davies and Lynn James in the Vauxhall Chevette. This was a real favourite once it gets to the woods section. A classic Austin Healey 3000 driven by Les McGuffin. Forgive my pronunciation. Tom Leeming driving the very unusual and just as classic as the others, Wartburg. My father had one of these. Now this is Alan Howes and John Pinder in the Aston Martin. It's a 2006 prepared car for the Race of Champions at the Stade de France by ProDrive. It was a demonstration car, only 4 were produced. Now we move on to the wood section of the stage. And as you can see, we had a mixture of all weathers. Sunshine to start. At this point it was sleet. We had some rain. And there are the Fairbank father and son team. That was just a little taster. I hope you enjoyed it. You will be able to find a link below to contact Lombard Rally Bath about their other events if you'd like to come along as a spectator or if you have a car. And also, if you want to see the whole rally, the DVD will be available from www.nwinsmodels.co.uk.
I'm Fiona Leggett, and I used to race in the BTCC quite some years ago now. So yeah, I've just come down today. That's the first time I've been out in the car in 13 years.
Thank you for watching. Please click on like if you've enjoyed the video, and please subscribe because that helps us enormously to produce these videos for you.